I didn't cry when he told me she mattered more than I did. I simply vanished. 3 weeks later, at 9:17 at night, a knock on my gate changed everything. It wasn't him standing there. It was the proof that his words weren't an emotional outburst. They were lines in a script, and I was being framed for a role I never agreed to play. My name is Alicia Powell, and if you looked at my life on a spreadsheet, you would find zero variances. I am 34 years old. I live in Columbus, Ohio, a city that feels like a reasonable compromise between ambition and affordability. I do not like surprises. I do not like drama. I certainly do not like the sensation of falling, which is why I have spent the last decade building a safety net so tight and intricate that I believed nothing could ever slip through it. I run a boutique firm called Wexford Compliance Studio. It sounds impressive, but mostly it is just me and 2 contract paralegals helping nervous startups and small businesses navigate the terrifying forest of government regulations. My job is to look at a company, find the cracks in their foundation, the missing permits, the sloppy payroll practices, the liabilities hiding in plain sight, and patch them before the whole thing collapses. I am a professional at anticipating disaster. That is my currency. People pay me to be paranoid so they do not have to be. It is a cruel irony, then, that while I was busy auditing everyone else's risks, I failed to notice the massive compliance failure sitting across from me at my own dinner table. His name is Colin Prescott. To our neighbors, our parents, and the few friends we still see regularly, he is my boyfriend. We have been together for 5 years, but in the eyes of the Internal Revenue Service and the health insurance adjusters, he is my husband. We signed the papers 18 months ago at the Franklin County Courthouse on a Tuesday morning, right after we grabbed coffee and right before I had a conference call with a client in Cleveland. It was not romantic, it was logistical. I had the superior health insurance plan with a low deductible, and Colin had a tax situation that benefited from filing jointly. We told ourselves that we were being modern and pragmatic. We said the wedding would come later, when we had the money for the kind of party that would impress his mother. It felt like a secret pact, a way of binding ourselves together that felt intimate specifically because it was so unromantic. It created a sense of familiarity that felt permanent. Even if it was slightly out of rhythm with the rest of the world, we were supposed to be a team. That was the narrative. We were saving for a house in Grandview Heights, or maybe Clintonville, somewhere with a porch and hardwood floors that did not squeak. I was the primary saver. That was just how the math worked out. I had accumulated a significant amount of capital, roughly $85,000. Sitting in a high-yield savings account that I monitored with the affection some people reserve for their pets. It was my money. Technically, it was in an account under my name, but in my head, and in our late-night conversations about kitchen islands and fenced-in yards, it was our money. Colin knew the number. He knew it hovered around the $80,000 mark. He knew that if we combined it with his smaller savings, we were only 6 months away from a 20% down payment. Colin works in logistics. Specifically, he is a mid-level manager at a place called Everlight Transit Systems. For the first 4 years of our relationship, his job was predictable. He went to the office at 8:30 in the morning. He came home at 5:30 in the afternoon, and he complained about traffic on I-71 for exactly 10 minutes before asking what we were doing for dinner. But in the last 3 months, the rhythm had broken. The word busy became a wall he built brick by brick. First, it was just the quarterly review. Then it was a system migration. Then it was a vague, all-consuming crisis involving the West Coast supply chain. He was always stuck in a meeting, or drowning in Slack messages, or polishing a deck for leadership. He started coming home at 7, then 8. He brought his laptop to the dinner table, the screen glowing blue against his face, his fingers flying across the keyboard while his pasta went cold. And then, the name started appearing, Sloan. It was never Sloan Mercer at first, just Sloan. Sloan had a great idea for the routing algorithm today. Sloan is basically carrying the entire project team on her back. God, Sloan is sharp. She talks like a razor blade. You have to be on your toes around her. I looked her up on LinkedIn. Of course, I am an auditor. Verification is what I do. Sloan Mercer was an operations director, blonde, but not in a bubbly way. In her profile picture, she looked severe and competent, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my first car. She looked like the kind of woman who drank espresso without sugar and never apologized for interrupting you. "She sounds intense," I had said one night, watching Colin type a message on his phone with a small, private smile playing on his lips. "She just gets it," Colin said, not looking up. "The corporate culture at Everlight is toxic. Alicia, you know that. Sloan is the only one who actually understands the pressure we are under." I told myself to be an adult. Adults have colleagues. Adults have work friends. Adults have work wives and work husbands and networking connections. I was not going to be the insecure woman who panicked because her partner found a female colleague intellectually stimulating. That was beneath me. I was Alicia Powell. I operated on facts, not jealousy, but the data points were starting to look bad. It began with the phone. For 5 years, Colin had left his phone face up on the coffee table, on the kitchen counter, on the nightstand. We knew each other's passcodes. I could pick up his phone to change the music in the car, and he could pick up mine to check the weather. It was an open ecosystem. Then, about 6 weeks ago, the phone flipped. Every time he set it down, the screen faced the surface. If we were watching a movie and it buzzed, he would snatch it up with a reflex speed that was almost reptilian. "Work," he would mutter. "Disaster in Phoenix." Then there was the Wi-Fi. I came home one Tuesday afternoon to find my laptop would not connect. I reset the router. Nothing. When Colin came home, I mentioned it. "Oh, right," he said, opening the fridge and not looking at me. "I changed the password. Security update. IT at work said we should rotate our home passwords every 90 days. Best practice." "You changed the Wi-Fi password without telling me," I asked. I lost an hour of billing time trying to troubleshoot the router. "I forgot." "Okay." He snapped the tab on a sparkling water, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. "I am trying to protect our data. Alicia, why do you have to make it a thing?" I let it go. I put it in the stress column. He was stressed. The job was hard. Sloan was demanding. I was the supportive partner. I was the safe harbor. But the strangest shift was the language. Colin had never been a man of introspection. His emotional vocabulary had historically been limited to happy, tired, hungry, and annoyed. Suddenly, he sounded like a walking Instagram infographic about mental health. He started using words like bandwidth and holding space and emotional labor. "I do not have the bandwidth for this conversation right now," he told me when I asked if he had remembered to call his mother for her birthday. "I feel like you are not honoring my boundaries," he said when I asked why he was taking a phone call in the garage at 10 o'clock at night. "This dynamic feels very codependent," he noted when I asked him to please put his dirty dishes in the dishwasher instead of leaving them in the sink for 3 days. It was not his voice. It was a script he was learning from someone else. I knew, deep down in the pit of my stomach, exactly whose voice it was. I could imagine Sloan Mercer sitting in a glass-walled conference room, or maybe at a sleek bar with craft cocktails, using these words to dissect the failings of her coworkers, and Colin absorbing them like a sponge, thinking they made him sound sophisticated and self-aware. The evidence was piling up. In my professional life, if a client showed this many red flags, the secrecy, the sudden change in operating procedures, the external influence, the deflection, I would have launched a forensic audit immediately. I would have demanded access to the books. I would have frozen the accounts. But this was not a client. This was Colin. This was the man who held my hair back when I got food poisoning in Cancun. This was the man who knew exactly how I took my coffee black, with a dash of cinnamon. This was the man I had legally bound myself to because we wanted to build a future together. I chose to trust him. I made a conscious, deliberate decision to ignore the data. I told myself that relationships go through rough patches. I told myself that eventually the project at Everlight would end. Sloan Mercer would move on to ruin someone else's life, and Colin would come back to me. I convinced myself that I was smart enough to know the difference between a rough patch and a dead end. I thought I was too observant to be blindsided. I thought that if something was truly, fundamentally wrong, I would see it clearly. I was arrogant. I thought I was the auditor, the one checking the boxes. I did not realize that I was the one being audited. I did not realize that while I was busy trying to be the cool, understanding girlfriend, someone else was rewriting the entire operating agreement of my life. On the morning of July 15th, 2025, I woke up feeling good. I had just closed a major contract with a fintech startup in the short north. It was a retainer agreement worth $45,000 a year. It was the kind of stability my business needed. I wanted to celebrate. "Let's go to the Pearl tonight," I texted Colin. "Oysters and champagne, my treat. I have good news." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Sure," the text came back. 7 o'clock, meet you there. I remember looking at that text and feeling a wave of relief. He said yes. No excuses, no meetings, just dinner. I thought, okay, we are turning a corner. We are going to be fine. I arrived at the Pearl at 6:55. I ordered a glass of Prosecco. I checked my email. I waited. At 7:15, I sent a text. "I am here at the bar." At 7:30, I called. Straight to voicemail. At 7:45, the bartender asked if I wanted to order an appetizer. I said I was waiting for someone. At 8:10, my phone buzzed. It was not a text. It was a notification from our shared calendar, a legacy setting he must have forgotten to turn off. It popped up on my screen. Bright and cheerful. Calendar event. Updated strategy session, The Keep. Attendees, Colin Prescott, Sloan Mercer. He was not stuck in traffic. He was not in a crisis meeting at the office. He was at a bar less than 3 miles away, having a strategy session with her. I stared at the screen until the backlight timed out and the phone went black. I did not storm out. I did not call him screaming. I paid my tab $22, including the tip, and I walked to my car. I drove home in silence. The radio was off. The windows were up. I sat on the sofa in our living room, the one we had picked out together at IKEA 3 years ago, and I waited. I turned on one lamp, a small reading light in the corner, leaving the rest of the room in shadow. I needed him to see me when he walked in. I needed to see his face. I was not afraid. Exactly. I was cold. It was a strange, clinical sensation, like the blood in my veins had been replaced with ice water. I was Alicia Powell, the compliance officer, and I finally had the one thing I valued more than anything else. I had proof. But as the clock ticked past 9 o'clock, and the headlights of passing cars swept across the living room wall, I realized I was wrong about one thing. I thought the worst thing that could happen tonight was discovering that my boyfriend was sleeping with his coworker. I thought that was the ceiling of the disaster. I had no idea. Infidelity was just the surface. What was coming through that door was not just a cheating partner, it was a demolition crew, and I was sitting right in the middle of the building they had already rigged to blow. The front door opened at exactly 8:52 at night. I know the time because I had been watching the digital clock on the microwave change numbers for the last hour. It was the only light source I had left on in the kitchen. The rest of the house was submerged in a heavy, deliberate darkness. Colin did not call out my name when he walked in. That was the first deviation from our standard operating procedure. Usually, he would announce his arrival with a generic "hey" or a complaint about the humidity. Tonight, there was only the sound of the deadbolt sliding back into place and the soft, wet thud of his sneakers being kicked off against the baseboard. I sat in the armchair in the corner of the living room. From my vantage point, I could see into the hallway. The light from his smartphone washed his face in a ghostly, artificial blue. He was smiling. It was not a smile of greeting or relief. It was a private, intimate smirk directed entirely at the screen in his hand. His thumbs moved rapidly, tapping out a rhythm that felt frantic and eager. He took 3 steps into the house before he looked up and realized he was not alone. When he saw my silhouette, he flinched. The smile vanished, replaced instantly by a look of defensive exhaustion. It was a transformation so sudden it looked practiced. "Jesus, Alicia," he breathed out. putting a hand to his chest. "Why are you sitting in the dark? You scared the hell out of me." "We had a reservation," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It was flat, stripped of any inflection. It was the voice I used when I had to tell a client that their tax liability was double what they expected. 7 o'clock. The Pearl, Colin sighed. It was a long, ragged sound intended to convey that he was the one carrying the weight of the world, not the one who had just stood his girlfriend up for nearly 2 hours. He walked past me into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. The light from the open door spilled out, illuminating the back of his shirt. It was wrinkled. I know, he said, his back to me. "I am sorry. It was a disaster at the office. The West Coast team dropped the ball on the Seattle shipment. I have been putting out fires since 3 o'clock. He was lying. I knew he was lying. I had seen the calendar notification. I knew he had been at the Keep, a bar that was famous for its dim lighting and artisanal cocktails, not for crisis management. But I did not call him out on the location yet. I wanted to see how far he would go. "You could have texted," I said. I did not have a second to breathe. "Alicia," he snapped. He grabbed a bottle of water and slammed the fridge door shut. "Why do you always assume the worst? I'm working my ass off here." He turned around. And that was when I saw it. His phone was still in his hand, and the screen lit up again. A notification bubble appeared at the top. I was 10 feet away, but I have 20/20 vision, and in the dark room, the bright white letters were impossible to miss. Sloan, and then another one. Immediately after, Sloan. The phone buzzed in his hand. He looked down at it, and for a split second, the exhaustion mask slipped. His eyes widened. He wanted to read it. He wanted to reply. I could see the muscles in his thumb twitching with the urge to unlock the screen. "You are still working?" I asked. "The fire is not out yet. It is an ongoing situation," he said, looking away from the phone with visible effort. "I need to check this." He unlocked the phone. He did not step away. He stood right there in the middle of the kitchen, typing. He was not reading a supply chain report. He was reading a text message, and he was smiling again. It was smaller this time, a reflex he tried to suppress. But it was there. I stood up. My legs felt stiff. Am I competing with the work, Colin, or am I competing with a person? He stopped typing. He looked up at me, his face hardening. The blue light from the phone cast deep shadows under his eyes. "Here we go," he muttered. "I knew it. I knew you were going to do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Ask why my boyfriend missed our anniversary dinner to text his female colleague." "It is not an anniversary," he said. "We celebrated the contract last week, and her name is Sloan. You can say her name. You do not have to say it like it is a dirty word." "Sloan," I repeated. The name tasted metallic. "You were with her." "I was with the team," he corrected. He was lying effortlessly now. It was terrifying how smooth it was. "She is the lead on this project. Of course I'm communicating with her. She is the only one who actually knows what is going on." "You are texting her right now," I said. "You are standing in our kitchen, 5 minutes after walking in the door, and you are texting her instead of talking to me." "She is asking about the manifest for tomorrow," Colin said. "Stop being so paranoid. It is unattractive." The word hit me like a physical slap. Unattractive. Not unreasonable, not wrong, unattractive. He was looking at me not as a partner, but as an object that was failing to please him. "I am not being paranoid," I said, stepping closer. "I am being observant. You changed your passwords. You hide your screen. You missed dinner. And now you are gaslighting me about a woman you talk about more than you talk about your own mother." "I am not gaslighting you." His voice rose, cracking with indignation. "God, you just love that word. Don't you? You love acting like the victim. I am the one under pressure here. Alicia, I am the one trying to keep my job in a brutal market, and instead of support, I come home to this, to an interrogation. I just want the truth," I said. "Is there something going on with Sloan?" Colin let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. He ran a hand through his hair. You know what the difference is between you and her. Sloane gets it. She understands the stakes. She does not sit in the dark waiting to ambush me. She does not control. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Control, I asked. Is that what you think I do? You audit everything, Alicia. He spat. You audit the finances. You audit the schedule. You audit my feelings. It is exhausting. Sloane is easy. She just lets things be. She lets me breathe. He was rewriting our history in real time, my planning, my saving, the stability I had built for us. He was twisting it into a cage. He was taking the safety I provided and calling it suffocation. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the weakness in his jawline. I saw the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other, unable to hold his ground. I saw a man who had found a shiny new mirror that reflected a better version of himself, and he was willing to smash everything else to keep looking into it. So, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, are you saying that she is more important than me? I wanted him to hear it. I wanted him to say the words out loud, so they would hang in the air between us, undeniable and absolute. Colin stared at me. The phone in his hand buzzed again. He did not look at it this time. He looked straight into my eyes, and I saw something cold and unfamiliar settle over his features. It was not anger, it was calculation. Yes, he said. The word hung there. Simple, devastating. Right now, he added, twisting the knife. Yes, she matters more, because she actually makes me feel like I am worth something. I felt the ground beneath me shift. It was a vertigo sensation. The realization that the last 5 years the shared bank accounts, the plans for the house, the quiet Sunday mornings had been dissolved in an instant. I had been fired. That was what this was. I was being terminated from my own life. I did not say anything. I could not. My training as an auditor kicked in. When you find a discrepancy that cannot be reconciled, you do not argue with the data. You accept it. You close the file. I turned away from him. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of this house before I started screaming, because if I started, I did not think I would ever stop. And another thing, Colin said. I stopped. I did not turn back. The way you are acting right now, he said, his voice steady, low, and terrifyingly precise. The way you are standing there, the look on your face, it makes me feel unsafe. The world stopped. Unsafe. I know that word. I work in compliance. I know exactly what that word means in the landscape of modern America. It is not just a description of an emotion. It is a key. It is a trigger for a sequence of events that can destroy a person's life. If you are unsafe, you are a victim. If you are unsafe, you need protection. If you are unsafe, you can call human resources. You can call the police. You can file for a restraining order. You can claim duress in a financial dispute. Colin was not just hurting my feelings. He was laying a foundation. He was using a specific terminology that stripped me of my humanity and turned me into a threat. He was not speaking to his girlfriend. He was speaking to a future audience. He was establishing a record. My blood ran cold. This was not a breakup. This was a setup. He was waiting for a reaction. He wanted me to yell. He wanted me to throw something. He wanted me to turn around and get in his face so he could say, "See, she is volatile. She is dangerous. I was afraid for my life. I did not move. I did not breathe. My hand was resting on the granite countertop, and I pressed my fingers down until the tips turned white, grounding myself in the physical reality of the stone. Do not react. A voice in my head screamed, "Do not give him the footage." I slowly took my hand off the counter. I walked over to the hook by the garage door where my keys hung. The metal jingle sounded deafening in the silence. "Alicia," Colin said. There was a hint of confusion in his voice now. He had delivered his line. But I had missed my cue. I was supposed to be the crazy ex-girlfriend. I was supposed to provide the evidence. I grabbed my purse. I checked my pocket to make sure my phone was there. "Alicia, where are you going?" he asked. "We are not done talking. You cannot just walk away when I am expressing my vulnerability. Vulnerability. Another weaponized therapy word. I opened the door to the garage. The air inside smelled like gasoline and old cardboard. It was the smell of the life we were supposed to build, the boxes of holiday decorations, the camping gear we used once a year, the tools he never touched. I stepped onto the concrete. "Alicia," he called out, his voice sharper now, edged with genuine frustration. "If you leave, do not expect me to be here when you get back." I did not look back. I did not slam the door. I closed it firmly. Hearing the click of the latch engaging, it sounded like the period at the end of a sentence. I got into my car. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 2 tries to get the engine started. I backed out of the driveway, the headlights sweeping across the front of the house I had spent 3 weekends landscaping last spring. I saw the silhouette of Colin standing in the kitchen window, watching me. The blue light of his phone was back against his face. I drove. I did not know where I was going. I just drove until the house was a speck in the rearview mirror, and then I drove until it was gone completely. I did not cry. Crying implies loss. And as I merged onto the highway, watching the city lights blur past me at 65 miles per hour, I realized I had not lost anything. I had escaped. But the word echoed in my head, bouncing around the cabin of the car like a trapped bird. Unsafe. He had fired the first shot, and I had the terrible, sinking feeling that the war had only just begun. I treated the breakup like a containment breach. That is the only way I can describe the 48 hours that followed my departure from the house. There were no drunken voicemails. There were no tearful pleas for closure. There was only the swift, surgical execution of security protocols. I drove to a motel off Interstate 70, one of those places where the reception clerk does not make eye contact and the carpet smells like decades of stale tobacco and industrial cleaner. I paid cash for 3 nights. I did not want a credit card trail showing where I was sleeping. As soon as the door clicked shut behind me, I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress and took out my phone. Block, block, block. I blocked Colin on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I blocked his phone number. I blocked his email address. Then I went further. I went into the settings of my digital life and started scrubbing. I revoked access to shared albums. I changed the password to my Netflix account, my Amazon Prime, and the grocery delivery service. I did not do this out of pettiness. I did it because every shared login was a window he could look through, and I was done being watched. The next morning, I drove back to the house when I knew he would be at work. I parked 2 streets over and walked, watching the driveway for 5 minutes before approaching. His car was gone. I let myself in. The air inside felt stagnant, heavy with the silence of things left unsaid. I did not pack everything. I did not have the time or the emotional bandwidth for a full move. I took my clothes, my laptop, my physical files, and the small safe from the back of the closet that held my birth certificate and passport. Before I left, I did one last thing. I went to the keypad on the garage door. The code had been his birthday for 3 years. I reset it. I punched in a random string of numbers that meant nothing to anyone, verified it locked, and then I called a locksmith to meet me there. Within an hour, the front and back door locks were changed. I left a set of the old keys on the kitchen counter with a note that contained 2 words: "Move out." Then I left. I did not look back. For the next 2 weeks, I lived in a state of high-functioning numbness. I stayed at an Airbnb in German Village, a small carriage house behind a larger property where the owners were retired and kept to themselves. It was quiet. It was safe. I threw myself into my work with a fervor that bordered on religious. Wexford Compliance Studio became my entire world. I arrived at the office at 6:30 in the morning and did not leave until 8 at night. I scrutinized spreadsheets until my eyes burned. I audited compliance reports for a manufacturing firm in Dayton with a level of detail that was probably unnecessary, but it felt good. It felt controllable. Numbers did not lie. Numbers did not look you in the eye and tell you that you made them feel unsafe while plotting to replace you. My phone blew up. Of course. Not from him, he was blocked, but from the blast radius. Mutual friends, his cousin, a couple of neighbors, Alicia. What happened? Colin says you guys got into a huge fight. Are you okay? He sounds really worried. I did not engage. I did not explain. I knew that anything I said could be twisted. If I said he was a cheater, they would say I was vindictive. If I said he was gaslighting me, they would say I was dramatic. So I gave them nothing. It is over. I texted back to the 3 people I felt owed a response. That was it. No details, no accusations. Just the period at the end of the sentence. At night. However, the silence was harder to manage. I would lie in the strange bed in the carriage house, listening to the unfamiliar settling noises of the building, and the replay loop would start. Unsafe. The words scraped against the inside of my skull like metal on glass. I analyzed it. I dissected it. I knew why he used it. In the corporate world, safety is the ultimate trump card. If someone feels unsafe, all other arguments are invalid. Logic does not matter. Facts do not matter. The perception of threat is enough to trigger a defensive response. Colin had not just broken up with me, he had designated me as a hazard. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering if I should have screamed, wondering if I should have fought back. But then I would remember the blue light on his face, the cold calculation in his eyes, and I knew I had done the right thing. Silence was my only shield. If I gave him noise, he would record it. If I gave him anger, he would market it. Then, the probing began. It started exactly 14 days after the argument. I was sitting at my desk at work, reviewing a tax liability assessment, when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Google. New sign-in attempt blocked. Location Columbus, Ohio. Device iPhone 15 Pro. My heart hammered against my ribs. That was Colin's phone. He was trying to get into my secondary email account, the one I used for bills and utilities, the one that was linked to the cloud storage where we kept our digital documents. I clicked, "No, it was not me," and immediately changed the password to a string of 20 random characters. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a sudden, icy clarity. He was not looking for old photos. He was looking for information. 2 hours later, I got a text message from my bank. Fraud alert. We declined a request to change the contact phone number on your account, ending in 4491. If this was not you, please call immediately. I stared at the screen. The account ending in 4491 was my primary savings account, the one with the $85,000, the one he knew about, the one we were supposed to use for the house. I sat back in my ergonomic office chair and felt the blood drain from my face. This was not a breakup. This was a raid. Colin did not just want to leave the relationship. He wanted to leave with a severance package. He assumed that because we were legally married, he had a right to that money. He assumed that because I was quiet, I was weak. I called the bank. I spent 45 minutes on the phone with a fraud specialist, answering security questions, setting up a verbal password that only I would know. I locked everything down. I enabled 2-factor authentication on every single financial instrument I owned, pointing them to an authentication app rather than my phone number, just in case he tried to clone my SIM card. The attempts stopped for a day. Then the new tactic started. My phone began to ping with messages from unknown numbers. He was using burner apps. "Alicia, please pick up. I am worried about you. I just want to talk. We need to settle things like adults. I am sorry if I hurt you. Can we meet for 10 minutes? Just 10 minutes. You are scaring me with this silence. Please let me know you are alive." The tone was perfect. It was the tone of a concerned partner dealing with an unstable woman. If anyone else saw these messages, I would look like a monster for ignoring them. I did not reply. I did not type out a furious paragraph telling him to go to hell. I did what a compliance officer does. I took a screenshot. I noted the date. I noted the time. I noted the content. I saved the image to a secure, encrypted folder on my hard drive named Evidence. I did this for every single message. I built a timeline. I created a log. If he wanted to tell a story, I was going to have the footnotes. But the real blow came 3 days later. It was a Thursday afternoon. The office was quiet. I opened my work email to send a draft to a client. At the top of my inbox, there was an email from a sender I did not recognize. The display name was Concerned Citizen. I hovered my mouse over it. My stomach turned over. I clicked open. The subject line read, Formal complaint regarding Alicia Powell. The body of the email was short. To the management of Wexford Compliance Studio, I am writing to bring to your attention some concerning behavior regarding the owner of your firm, Ms. Powell. It has come to my attention that she has been engaging in a pattern of harassment and stalking directed at a former partner. While I understand this is a personal matter, the erratic nature of her behavior raises questions about her professional judgment and stability. I believe clients trusting her with sensitive data should be aware of the character of the person they are hiring. Sincerely, a concerned party. I sat there, frozen. The office air conditioning hummed, but I felt like I was in a vacuum. There was no proof attached, no screenshots, no specific details, just vague, poisonous words designed to plant a seed of doubt. If this had gone to a boss, I might have been called into HR, but I was the boss. I was the owner. The email came to me because I was the only public contact listed on the website. But the intent was clear. They were not just trying to steal my money. They were trying to destroy my reputation. They were trying to make me unhireable. If I lost my credibility, I lost my business. If I lost my business, I lost my income. If I lost my income, the $85,000 would be drained just to survive. I looked at the timestamp on the email. 2:34 in the afternoon. I printed it. I saved the header information which showed the IP address of the sender. I put the hard copy in a folder on my desk. Then I swiveled my chair around and looked out the window at the gray Ohio sky. I finally understood the game. This was not about love lost. This was not about a new girlfriend. This was a demolition project. Colin and Sloan were building a narrative. They were writing a script where Colin was the victim of a crazy, vindictive, stalking wife. And for that script to work, I had to be the villain. They needed me to be unstable. They needed me to harass them. And since I was not doing it, they were going to manufacture it. I took a sip of my cold coffee. It tasted bitter, like ash. Okay, I whispered to the empty office. You want a villain? You're going to wish you had just settled for a ghost. I turned back to my computer. I did not reply to the email. I did not call Colin. I opened a new browser tab and typed in the search bar. I needed a lawyer, but not just any lawyer. I needed someone who understood that in modern America. The truth does not matter as much as the documentation. I was done hiding. It was time to start building a wall that they would break their hands trying to punch through. It was August 6th, 2025. The heat in Columbus had not broken for 10 days. Even at night, the air was thick and heavy. Pressing against the windows of the carriage house I was renting in German Village, I was sitting at the small kitchen table with a glass of lukewarm water and a stack of printed bank statements, highlighting every transaction that looked even remotely suspicious. The time was exactly 9:17 at night. I know the time because I had just checked my phone to ensure my Do Not Disturb mode was active. The silence in the house was absolute. It was the kind of silence I had cultivated carefully over the last 3 weeks, a protective layer between me and the chaos Colin was trying to unleash. Then, there was a sound. It was not a knock on the door. It was metal hitting metal. A soft, tentative clink against the iron gate that separated the small courtyard from the brick sidewalk of the alley. I froze. My highlighter stopped mid-stroke on a withdrawal of $40. In this neighborhood, at this hour, sounds were usually identifiable. A car door slamming, a dog barking, the distant hum of traffic on I-70. But this was deliberate. Someone was standing at the gate, testing the latch. I did not move toward the door. I moved toward the window, keeping my body pressed against the wall so I would not cast a shadow. I peered through the slats of the blinds. The motion sensor light in the courtyard had triggered, flooding the small brick patio with a harsh, white glare. Standing on the other side of the black iron bars was a woman. She was wearing a trench coat, which was absurd given that it was 80 degrees outside. Her hands were shoved deep into her pockets, and she was shifting her weight from foot to foot, looking over her shoulder at the empty alleyway. I squinted. It took my brain a full 5 seconds to process the face because it was so completely out of context. It was Kendra Prescott, Colin's half-sister. I had met her exactly twice in 5 years. Once at a funeral for an aunt I did not know, and once at a barbecue where she had sat in the corner drinking diet soda and checking her watch every 4 minutes. She was the family outlier, the one who lived in Cleveland, worked in a library, and generally avoided the Prescott family drama. Colin rarely spoke of her, except to say she was weird and antisocial. I unlocked the deadbolt. I did not open the door fully. I left the security chain on, cracking it just enough to see her face without the obstruction of the blinds. "Kendra," I whispered. She jumped. Her eyes were red-rimmed, wide, and terrified. She looked like someone who had just witnessed a hit-and-run. "Alicia," she hissed. Her voice was trembling. "Let me in, please." "Why are you here?" I asked. My compliance brain was already running a risk assessment. Was she a Trojan horse? Was she wearing a wire? Was Colin parked around the corner? "I do not have much time," she said, and she glanced behind her again. "Colin will know I am here. His location sharing is off, but he tracks the family plan. I turned my GPS off a mile away, but I do not know how long I have." That detail, the specificity of the technical countermeasure, made me undo the chain. A trap would not be this messy. A trap would be polished. Kendra looked like she was vibrating with adrenaline. I opened the door. She stepped inside quickly, bringing the humid night air with her, and I immediately locked the door behind her. She did not say hello. She did not ask how I was. She stood in the middle of the small living room, breathing hard, her hands still clutching the fabric of her coat. "I need you to take out your phone," she said. I frowned, taking a step back. "Why?" "Just do it," she pleaded. "Take it out, but do not unlock it. Just hold it." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "Turn on airplane mode," she commanded. "Right now. Cut the signal. Wi-Fi 2, Bluetooth, everything." The urgency in her voice sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I did as she asked. I toggled the switches, severing my device from the digital world. "Okay," I said. "It is off the grid. What is going on?" "Kendra?" She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a burner phone. It was a cheap Android model, the kind you buy at a gas station for $30. The screen was cracked. "I cannot send this to you," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Digital trails. Sloan has IT guys. They are watching everything. If I email this, or text it, they will flag it. You have to look at it here." She unlocked the phone and tapped on the photo gallery. She handed it to me. Her hand was shaking so bad she almost dropped it. "Swipe left," she said. I looked down at the screen. It was a photograph of another screen, a picture taken of a laptop monitor. The resolution was grainy, but the text was legible. It was a group chat on an encrypted messaging platform. The participants were listed at the top: Colin P., Sloan M., Legal, R. H. My stomach dropped. Legal. That was not a lawyer. That was a designation. I read the messages. Sloan M. Is she reacting yet? Colin P. Nothing. Total radio silence. I sent the apology text and the I am worried text. No reply. She is stonewalling. Legal. R. H. We need a reaction. The judge will not grant an emergency ex parte order based on silence. Silence looks like rationality. We need instability. We need her to threaten you. Sloan M. What about the unsafe angle? Did you use the script Colin P. verbatim? I told her she made me feel unsafe. I emphasized the tone of her voice. She just walked out. I stared at the word. Unsafe. It was sitting there, enclosed in quotation marks. It was not a feeling he had experienced in the heat of the moment. It was a line item. It was a tactical deployment of vocabulary designed to trigger a specific legal outcome. Swipe, Kendra said. Tears were starting to leak out of her eyes. Please, look at the next one. I swiped. It was a screenshot of a draft document. The header read, Petition for Civil Protection Order. The petitioner was Colin Prescott. The respondent was Alicia Powell, under the section titled Statement of Facts. I saw my own name woven into a story I did not recognize. The respondent, Ms. Powell, has a history of financial control and emotional volatility. On the night of July 15th, she became aggressive, blocking the exit and preventing the petitioner from leaving the room. The petitioner feared for his physical safety due to her erratic behavior and refusal to allow him to de-escalate the conflict. "He is lying," I said. My voice was calm, but my hand was gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. "I never blocked the exit. I left. I was the one who left." "It does not matter," Kendra said. "They do not need it to be true forever. They just need it to be true for 24 hours. Enough to get the temporary order. Once the order is in place, if you try to contact him to defend yourself, you violate the order, then you get arrested, then you have a criminal record, then you lose your license, then they take the assets." She looked at me, her face pale. "They are trying to provoke you. Alicia, they need you to show up at his house or his work. They need you to send a screaming text message. Just one. That is all they need. One text that says, 'I am going to destroy you,' or 'you will pay for this.' If you send that, they win." I looked at the chat again. Legal. R. Wrote, "Keep poking. Use the burner numbers. Call her at 2 a.m. Mess with her bank logins. Sleep deprivation induces paranoia. She will snap eventually." I felt a wave of nausea. The login attempts, the late-night texts, the fraud alerts. It was not just harassment. It was a calculated psychological siege, built to force a collapse. "Why?" I asked, lifting my gaze to Kendra. "Why are you showing me this? He's your brother." Kendra swiped the back of her hand under her nose. She looked wrung out. "Because I was the trial run," she said, barely above a whisper. I just stared at her. "What, 3 years ago?" Kendra said. "Before he ever met you. There was a girl in Cincinnati. He pulled the exact same stunt. Not for money that time, he just wanted out. And he didn't want to be the villain. He convinced everyone she was unstable. He convinced me she was unstable." Her voice tightened. "I helped him. Alicia. I wrote a statement saying I saw her screaming at him. I lied for him because he's my brother." She drew in a shaky breath. "She broke," Kendra murmured. 6 months later, she lost her job, her name, everything. Her eyes flicked away, like she couldn't bear to hold mine. And I found out later Sloan was coaching him back then, too, just as a friend. But now, Kendra swallowed, now they've perfected the playbook. And when I saw them doing it to you, when I saw them talking about your savings account, she reached out and tapped the phone screen. "There is one more thing," she said. "A voice note. Colin sent it to Sloan yesterday. You need to hear it." I did not want to hear it. I wanted to throw the phone through the window and run until my lungs burned. But I am an auditor. I review the evidence. I pressed play. The speaker volume was low. But in the silent house, it sounded like he was standing right next to me. "It is annoying. Honestly," Colin's voice said. He sounded bored. He sounded like he was ordering a sandwich. "She is tougher than the last one. She goes full turtle mode. But do not worry. I know which buttons to push. I'm going to have the power shut off at her office on Monday. Billing error. That will freak her out. She's obsessive about her business. If we threaten her income, she will come out swinging. And once she swings, we nail her." There was a pause in the recording, and then a laugh, a dry, humorless sound. "I just need that 85 grand released before the end of the quarter," he continued. "The down payment on the condo in the Arena District is due. Just keep the pressure on. She is weak. She just pretends to be strong." The recording ended. I stood there in the center of my rented living room, the phone cold in my hand, for weeks. I had been mourning. Deep down, a small, foolish part of me had been grieving the loss of the man I thought I loved. I had been wondering if I had been too harsh, if I had misread the situation, if maybe, just maybe, He really was just confused and stressed. But that voice, that bored, calculating voice, discussing the destruction of my livelihood, so he could buy a condo with his mistress, that was not the voice of a man in crisis. That was the voice of a predator. I looked at Kendra. She was watching me, waiting for me to cry, waiting for me to collapse. I did not collapse. I handed the phone back to her. My hand was steady now. The shaking had stopped completely. "Thank you," I said. My voice was different. It was deeper. It was the voice I used when I walked into a boardroom to tell a CEO that his company was committing fraud, and I had the documents to prove it. "What are you going to do?" Kendra asked, shoving the phone back into her pocket. "You cannot confront him. That is what they want." "I know," I said. "I am not going to confront him." I walked over to the window and looked out at the dark alley. The fear was gone. It had been replaced by something much colder and much more useful. "He thinks I am weak," I said softly, more to myself than to her. "He thinks I am a turtle hiding in a shell." I turned back to Kendra. "He forgot what I do for a living. Kendra, I do not just find problems. I dismantle the systems that create them." "He wants a reaction," I said, locking eyes with her. "He wants a villain." I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a fresh USB drive. "Give me the phone back," I said. "I need to copy everything. And then, I need you to sign something." "Sign what?" Kendra asked, stepping back. "A witness statement," I said. "Handwritten, dated, right now. You are going to write down everything you just told me, because when I go to war, I do not bring feelings. I bring exhibits." Kendra hesitated for a second. Then she nodded. She sat down at the table, pushed my bank statements aside, and picked up a pen. I looked at the clock. It was 9:45. The mourning period was over. The investigation had officially begun. I sat at my kitchen table, the surface of which was usually reserved for my morning coffee and the local newspaper, and watched my life being dismantled on a 5-inch screen. Kendra sat opposite me. She had stopped shaking, but her hands were still wrapped tightly around a mug of tea I had made her tea. She had not taken a single sip of. "Tell me about the party," I said. My pen was poised over a fresh legal pad. "You mentioned a party in the message logs." Kendra took a breath that sounded wet and ragged. "He called me 4 days ago. He was casual about it. He asked if I remembered the barbecue at your parents' house last 4th of July. The one where you supposedly had too much tequila and threw a steak knife at him." I stopped writing. I looked up. "I have not seen my parents on the 4th of July in 3 years. We were in Charleston last year, just the two of us. We watched the fireworks from a hotel balcony." "I know," Kendra said. "I told him that. I said, 'Colin, you were in South Carolina.' And he just laughed. He said, 'Not in the version of the story that the judge is going to hear. In that version, we were in your backyard, and Alicia was drunk, and she was violent.'" I wrote it down. "Fabricated incident, July 4th, 2024. Allegation assault with a weapon. Witnesses none, except coerced testimony. He told me I did not have to testify," Kendra continued, her voice dropping lower. "He said I just needed to sign an affidavit, a sworn statement supporting his petition for a protective order. He said, 'Just sign it, Ken. Nobody checks these things unless it goes to a full trial. And she will settle before that. She hates public scenes. She will pay me to go away just to keep her name out of the court records.'" I felt a cold, hard knot form in my chest. It was not heartbreak. It was the distinct sensation of being underestimated. Colin was banking on my desire for privacy. He thought my dignity was a weakness he could exploit, rather than a fortress I would defend. "Show me the coaching," I said, pointing to the phone. I saw the group chat title. "Show me where Sloan tells him what to say." Kendra swiped on the screen and handed the device back to me. I adjusted my glasses and leaned in. I was no longer a girlfriend looking at her partner's betrayal. I was a forensic auditor examining a chain of custody. The chat log was dated July 10th, 5 days before our anniversary dinner. 5 days before he came home late. They had been rehearsing. Sloan M. You cannot just say she is mad. Anger is not illegal. You have to frame it as instability. Use the vocabulary of emotional safety. Do not say, she yelled at me. Say, she violated my boundaries and refused to de-escalate. Colin P. Okay, got it. What if she just cries? She usually just shuts down. Sloan M. Then you pivot. If she is quiet, you say her silence feels like a hidden threat. You say her lack of emotion is a sign of potential violence or dissociation. You need to make the judge feel like you are walking on eggshells. Use the phrase, walking on eggshells. Judges eat that up. I transcribe the phrases onto my notepad. Emotional safety, de-escalate, hidden threat, walking on eggshells. It was a script. Every word he had said to me in the kitchen that night, the accusations, the specific phrasing about feeling unsafe, it had all been copy-pasted from this text thread. He had not been communicating with me. He had been performing a scene directed by a woman he was sleeping with. Scroll down, Kendra whispered. To the money. I scrolled. The timestamps moved to July 16th, the morning after I left. Colin P. She is gone. House is empty. I think she took the files. Legal. R. H. Did she take the cash? Colin P. The $85,000 is in an account under her name, but I know the routing number. I cannot touch it without her authorization or a court order. Sloan M. That is why we need the protective order. Colin. If you get the order, we file for temporary spousal support or claim financial abuse. We say she is withholding marital assets to punish you. We force a mediation. She will panic. She will write a check for $50,000 just to make the headache stop. That covers the down payment on the condo. Colin P. 50. I want half. I put up with her boring routines for 5 years. I earned that equity. I stared at the number. $50,000. That was the price of my reputation. They were willing to brand me a domestic abuser in the public record for $50,000. It was a terrifyingly low number. It made the betrayal feel cheap, almost industrial. I looked at the next image Kendra had captured. It was a screenshot of a shared note, titled Project Timeline. My breath caught in my throat. It was a project management schedule. Week 1. The soft phase. Apologize. Send, I miss you texts. Make her feel guilty for leaving. Goal, get her to meet in person. Week 2. The concern phase. Tell mutual friends she's acting erratic. Post vaguely sad things on social media. Contact her family asking if she is okay, implying she is having a breakdown. Suggest she needs therapy. Week 3. The hammer. File the ex parte petition. Allegation of stalking and harassment. Request immediate no-contact order and freezing of assets. I looked at the calendar on my wall. We were currently in week 3. The soft phase had failed because I blocked him. The concern phase had failed because I did not engage with our friends. Now, they were preparing the hammer. They are running behind schedule, I muttered, because I did not react. That is why they are escalating, Kendra said. Read the part about the reaction. I scrolled further down the chat log. Sloan M. She is too quiet. We need footage. Colin, you need to go to her office. Stand in the parking lot. If she comes out, approach her. If she runs, it looks like guilt. If she screams, you record it. If she hits you, jackpot. Legal. R. H. Better yet, trigger a wellness check. Call the police anonymously. Say you are afraid she is going to hurt herself. When the cops show up at her business, she will be flustered. She might get defensive. Police reports describing her as agitated are gold for the petition. I felt a flash of heat rise up my neck. They were planning to weaponize the police. They were going to waste public resources and risk my safety just to get a piece of paper that said I was agitated. There is more, Kendra said. She reached over and tapped a specific message from Colin, dated 3 months ago. Colin P. Do not worry about the bank security. I know her answers. Mother's maiden name is Vance. First pet was a retriever named Buster. Favorite teacher was Mr. Henderson. I have had them written down since we consolidated the insurance. Sloan M. Good, and the recovery email Colin P. It is the old Gmail account. I have the password for that one. She has not changed it since college. I closed my eyes for a second. The feeling of violation was absolute. He had not just learned these things as my partner, he had cataloged them as a spy. He had been hoarding my vulnerabilities like ammunition. The login attempts 2 weeks ago, that was him testing the keys, seeing which doors would open. Who is Sloan? I asked, opening my eyes. I know she works in logistics, but how does she know all this? The legal phrasing, the court procedures. Kendra hesitated. She does not just work in logistics, Alicia. She is the director of operations. But before that, she did 3 years in employee relations at Everlight. She handled internal investigations, harassment claims, firings. It clicked. The puzzle pieces slammed together with a deafening clarity. Sloan knew how to build a file because that was her job. She knew exactly what documentation was needed to terminate an employee, or in this case, a partner. She knew that the truth was irrelevant. What mattered was the preponderance of evidence. She was building a dossier on me the same way she would build a case to fire a negligent warehouse manager. She has friends in the legal department, Kendra added. That is who R.H. is. Someone inside the company. They are doing this on company time. Alicia. Using company resources. I looked at the screen one last time. There was a message from Sloan that chilled me more than the rest. Sloan M. We do not need her to actually do anything wrong. We just need to create a reasonable belief that she might. The standard of proof for a temporary order is low. Fear is enough. If you say you are afraid, the court has to listen. I handed the phone back to Kendra. I need everything, I said. My voice was steady, void of the tremors that had plagued me an hour ago. Every screenshot, every voice note, the export of the chat log. I brought a USB drive, Kendra said, pulling a small silver stick from her pocket. I downloaded the backup file from Colin's laptop when he was in the shower. It has the metadata. It shows the creation dates of the files. It proves the evidence against you was created before the alleged incidents happened. I took the USB drive. It felt heavy, like it contained the weight of my entire future. I need one more thing, I said. I pushed the legal pad toward her. Write it down, I commanded. Everything you told me, that he asked you to lie about the party, that he admitted to the plan, that you saw the messages, sign it, date it, put your driver's license number next to your signature. Kendra looked at the paper, then at me. She looked scared, but for the first time, she did not look like a victim. She looked like someone who was tired of running. He will never speak to me again, she said softly. If he wins this, I replied, he will not speak to you anyway. He will just use you until you are empty, like he tried to use me. Kendra picked up the pen. The scratching sound of the ballpoint on the yellow paper was the only noise in the room for the next 20 minutes. I watched her write. I watched her document the conspiracy that had been designed to ruin me. When she finished, she pushed the pad back to me. It was 3 pages of dense, erratic handwriting. It was messy, but it was the truth. I took a photo of the pages immediately and uploaded them to my encrypted cloud storage. Then I took the physical pages and locked them in my portable safe. Kendra stood up. She buttoned her trench coat, looking small and fragile in the harsh kitchen light. I have to go, she said. If I am gone too long, he will get suspicious. I walked her to the door. The night air was still oppressive. I looked out into the courtyard, checking the shadows for any movement. Kendra, I said, as she stepped out onto the patio. Why did you really come? You could have just stayed out of it. She turned back to me. Her hand was on the iron gate. Because, she said, her voice trembling slightly, I saw the draft of the petition. Alicia, he did not just say you were unstable. He put in a line about your business. He claimed your instability was affecting your professional judgment. He wanted to subpoena your client list to prove you were distracted. My blood went cold. They were not just coming for the $85,000. They were going for the jugular. They were going to salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. "Thank you," I said. It was inadequate, but it was all I had. Kendra opened the gate. Before she slipped into the alley, she looked me dead in the eye. "Do not text him," she warned. "Do not email him. Do not call him to scream at him for what you just saw. If you send him one single word, they will print it out, blow it up on a poster board, and show it to a judge as proof of your harassment. Silence is the only thing they cannot edit." "I know," I said. "Good luck. Alicia," she whispered. And then she was gone, disappearing into the darkness of the alleyway like she had never been there. I locked the gate. I locked the front door. I engaged the deadbolt. I checked the windows. I went back to the kitchen table. The USB drive sat there, gleaming under the light. I picked it up and plugged it into my laptop. I did not open the files yet. First, I opened a new email draft. I addressed it to Diane Wexler, a civil litigation attorney I had met at a compliance conference 3 years ago, a woman known for being as cold and sharp as a scalpel. Subject consultation request. Urgent, fraud/defamation/conspiracy. I did not cry. I did not throw the mug across the room. I sat in the silence, listening to the hum of my refrigerator, and I began to organize the evidence. They wanted a reaction. They wanted a fight. They had no idea what kind of war they had just started. I sat across from Diane Wexler in an office that smelled of expensive leather and old paper. The name similarity between her and my company, Wexford Compliance Studio, was a coincidence that usually made for a polite icebreaker at industry mixers. Today, however, there was no small talk. The air in the room was frigid, conditioned to a temperature that kept alert minds sharp and emotions dormant. Diane was 60 years old, with silver hair cut into a bob so precise it looked like it had been leveled with a laser. She was a civil litigator who specialized in high-conflict asset protection and defamation. She did not hand me a tissue when I sat down. She handed me a confidentiality agreement and a fee schedule. I watched her read the affidavit Kendra had written at my kitchen table. I watched her plug the USB drive into an air-gapped laptop she kept specifically for digital evidence. She clicked through the screenshots, the chat logs, the project plan, and the timeline of the harassment. Her face remained a perfect mask of neutrality. She did not gasp. She did not frown. She simply absorbed the data like a machine learning algorithm processing a new dataset. After 10 minutes of silence, she closed the laptop and took off her reading glasses. "Alicia," she said. Her voice was low and devoid of pity. "You need to stop thinking about this as a breakup. This is not a relationship ending. This is a hostile corporate takeover of your life." She tapped the folder containing the printouts of the chat logs. "They are not just trying to hurt your feelings," Diane continued. "This is a coordinated assault on your liquidity and your reputation. They are manufacturing a character profile of you that is designed to do 2 things. First, to secure a protective order that gives them leverage to freeze your assets. Second, to destroy your professional credibility so you cannot generate income to fight them. It is a siege strategy. They want to starve you out." Hearing it laid out so clinically was strangely grounding. It removed the last vestiges of sentimentality from my chest. "What do we do?" I asked. "We build a fortress," Diane said, "and then we stand inside it and wait for them to break their hands on the walls." I left her office at 10:30 in the morning with a list of instructions that was 3 pages long. I did not go to work. I took the rest of the day off to erase myself from the systems Colin Prescott thought he knew. My first stop was a credit union on the other side of Columbus, a place where I had never done business and where no one knew my name. I sat in a cubicle with a young loan officer and opened a new checking account and a new high-yield savings account. "I need to transfer a large sum," I told him, $85,000, "and I need it done via wire transfer today." I moved the money, all of it. I drained the account that Colin had been eyeing like a vulture. I left exactly $5 in the old account to keep it open, just to avoid triggering an automatic closure notice that might alert him too early. The $85,000 the money meant for hardwood floors and a nursery and a future that never existed vanished from the ledger he could see and reappeared in a vault he could not touch. Next, I froze my credit. I logged into Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. I placed a security freeze on all 3 reports. If Colin or Sloan tried to open a credit card in my name, or take out a loan, or even run a credit check, they would hit a brick wall. I generated unique PINs for each bureau and wrote them down in a physical notebook. I did not save them on my phone. Then came the passwords. I did not just change them. I scorched the earth. I used a random password generator to create strings of 24 characters for every single account I owned: email, banking, utilities, insurance, social media. I enabled hardware-based 2-factor authentication, linking everything to a YubiKey I bought at an electronics store, rather than my phone number. If they managed to clone my SIM card, it would not matter. Without the physical key in my pocket, the doors were shut. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was back at the house, my house. I had kicked him out. But legally, his residency status was murky until I filed the eviction or the divorce papers properly. I could not risk him coming back with a locksmith and a sob story. I called a security company Diane had recommended. They were expensive, but they were fast. By 6 o'clock, 2 technicians were installing high-definition cameras on the eaves of the roof, covering the driveway, the front porch, the back patio, and the alley gate. "I want audio recording enabled," I told the lead technician. "In Ohio, you need to be careful with wiretapping laws," he warned. "These are external cameras on private property clearly marked with signage," I said. "If someone stands on my porch and screams at me, I want to capture the decibel level. Can you do it?" "We can do it," he said. I had them install sensors on every window and door. I had a smart lock installed on the front door that logged every single interaction, every unlock, every failed code attempt, every manual turn of the latch. I wanted a data trail. If Colin so much as touched the doorknob, I wanted a time-stamped entry in a server log that I could print out and hand to a judge. That night, I sat in my living room. It felt different now. It did not feel like a home anymore. It felt like a command center. The monitors on my desk showed the perimeter of the house in crisp, infrared monochrome. I was watching the ghosts of my past life, waiting for them to manifest. The hardest part, however, was the silence. Diane had been explicit. "Absolute radio silence," she had said. "No texts, no emails, no answering the phone. If he stands on your lawn with a boombox, you do not open the window. You call the police, and you call me. You do not engage. Every word you say to him is a variable they can manipulate. If you say nothing, they have to invent everything, and lies are easier to disprove than twisted truths." I sat there and stared at my phone. It buzzed. No number. "Alicia, stop being childish. I know you moved the money. That is marital fraud. It was a lie. We were not divorced yet, and the money was premarital assets kept in a separate account. But the accusation was designed to make me panic. It was designed to make me text back, 'It is my money.' I did not text back. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop. I had named it simply The Timeline. Date, August 7th, 2025. Time, 8:42 p.m. Event, text message from spoofed number. Content, accusation of financial fraud regarding personal savings. Action screenshot taken. No response sent. I logged it. I was turning my life into an audit report. Every time he poked me, I did not bleed. I collected data. The next morning, I went into the office early. I called the head of IT for Wexford Compliance Studio into my office. His name was Marcus, a quiet guy who lived in server rooms and spoke in binary. "Marcus," I said, closing the blinds, "I need you to run a vulnerability scan on my internal email and the company server. Specifically, I want to know if there has been any external access from IP addresses associated with Everlight Transit Systems." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Everlight. That is a big logistics firm. Why would they be poking around our client data? I have reason to believe I am being targeted by a social engineering campaign involving one of their employees, I said. I do not want to alarm the staff, but I need to know if anyone has been trying to reset my passwords or access the client database. I will check the logs, Marcus said. If they have been here, I will find them. And Marcus, I added, if you find anything, do not block it yet. Just trace it. I need to know who is holding the keyboard. He nodded and left. I trusted him. He was like me. He found comfort in the absolute certainty of zeros and ones. Diane called me at noon. I have drafted a preemptive packet, she said. If they file for the protective order, we are not going to ask for a dismissal. We are going to counterfile for malicious prosecution and abuse of process. I am preparing the exhibits now. We have the chat logs Kendra gave us. We have the metadata showing the conspiracy to fabricate evidence. We have the timeline of your silence versus their escalation. Do you think they will actually file? I asked. They have to, Diane said. They are on a timeline too. They need that money for the condo, and Sloan needs a scapegoat for whatever is happening at Everlight. You are the perfect distraction. If they stop now, they admit defeat. Narcissists do not stop. Alicia, they escalate until they explode. I am ready, I said, and I was. A strange calm had settled over me. It was the calm of the professional. For years, I had viewed my relationship with Colin as a partnership, a messy, emotional, human thing that required compromise and softness. I realize now that was a categorization error. This was not a romance. It never had been. It was a long con. Colin was not a partner. He was a bad investment. Sloan was not a rival. She was a hostile external auditor trying to cook the books. I was done being the girlfriend. I was done being the victim. I was the compliance officer. And I was about to conduct the most rigorous, ruthless audit of their lives. I looked at the camera feed on my second monitor. A car had just slowed down in front of the house. It was a silver sedan. It lingered for 10 seconds, then sped away. I checked the playback. I zoomed in on the license plate. It was too blurry to read, but I logged the timestamp. August 8th, 2:14 p.m. Suspicious vehicle loitering. Let them come. Let them drive by. Let them send their emails and their texts and their threats. I was building a wall of facts, brick by brick, document by document, and when they finally crashed into it, I intended to be the one left standing. I opened my bank app one more time. The balance in the new account stared back at me. $85,000. Safe. The balance in the old account, $5. I allowed myself a very small, very cold smile. It was the only emotion I had felt in days. Then I closed the tab and went back to work. There were contracts to review. And unlike Colin, I actually did my job. The silence I had imposed on my life was no longer empty. It was filled with the electronic noise of a man losing his grip on the narrative. Colin stopped using the strategy of timed, calculated messages. He began to spray fire. My phone log became a testament to his unraveling. Monday alone brought 17 calls from 6 different numbers. I did not block them immediately. I let them ring to voicemail, allowing the data to accumulate, and then I logged each number into my spreadsheet before blocking it. He cycled through personalities like a bad actor auditioning for 3 different roles in the same play. At 10 in the morning, he was the repentant sinner. I am so sorry. Alicia, I just want to fix this. At 2 in the afternoon, he was the victim. You are destroying my mental health. Your silence is abusive. By 6 in the evening, he was the shadow. You think you are smart, but you have no idea what is coming. Then came the voicemail that almost made me break my rule. It came from a prepaid burner number at 11:42 at night. The voice was breathless, hushed, as if he were hiding in a closet. Alicia, please, you have to pick up. I am scared. It is Sloan. She is taking this too far. I did not want to do any of this. She is making me. You are the only one who can help me. Please, just call me back. I think I'm in trouble. I sat in the dark of my rented living room and listened to it 3 times. The fear in his voice sounded genuine. It was a pitch-perfect frequency of distress. For a fleeting second, the old instinct, the instinct to nurture, to fix, to protect the man I loved, flared up in my chest. But then I looked at the transcript Kendra had given me. Week 1 goal. Make her feel guilty. Week 2 goal. Suggest she needs therapy. This was an improvisation on the theme. He was trying to flip the board. If he could position himself as Sloane's victim, he thought I might open the door to rescue him. And the moment I opened that door, he would jam his foot in it and serve me with a lawsuit. I saved the audio file. I named it manipulation_attempt_04.mp3. I did not call him back. The next evening, the war moved from the digital world to my front porch. I was heating up soup for dinner when the room was suddenly bathed in red and blue light. The flashing strobes cut through the blinds, sweeping across the walls in a dizzying rhythm. I walked to the window. A police cruiser was parked at the curb. 2 officers were walking up the path to the carriage house. My heart hammered against my ribs, a primal, physical reaction to authority approaching with intent. But my brain stayed cold. This was the wellness check. This was the script. Legal, R. had suggested it in the chat. Call the police anonymously. Say you are afraid she's going to hurt herself. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my hair. I picked up my phone and started a video recording. Holding it down at my side but with the lens facing out, I opened the door before they knocked. "Good evening, officers," I said. My voice was level, polite, and completely steady. The lead officer, a young man who looked like he expected to find a hysterical woman holding a razor blade, blinked. He looked at me dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and slacks, holding a phone, standing in a clean, well-lit living room. "Ma'am, are you Alicia Powell?" he asked. "I am," I said. "Is there a problem?" "We received a call expressing concern for your welfare," he said, shifting his weight. "The caller stated that you sent a message threatening self-harm and that you might be in possession of a weapon." "I see," I said. "I can assure you I am fine. I am eating tomato soup and reviewing client files. I have not sent any messages to anyone in 3 weeks." I stepped back slightly to let them see into the room. It was orderly. There were no broken plates. There was no chaos. There was just the quiet discipline of a woman working. "Do you mind if we see some ID?" the officer asked. "Not at all." I walked to the table, picked up my driver's license, and handed it to him. "Officer, may I ask if the caller identified himself as Colin Prescott?" The officer looked up from the card. "I cannot disclose the caller's identity, ma'am. It was an anonymous tip." "I understand," I said. "However, for your report, you should know that I am currently in the process of separating from a partner who has threatened to use law enforcement to harass me. I have documentation of a conspiracy to swat me." I pointed to the camera mounted above the door. "This interaction is being recorded for my safety. I would appreciate the incident number for this visit so my lawyer can follow up." The officer handed my license back. The tension drained out of his posture. He realized he had been used. Police officers hate being used as pawns in domestic disputes. "Incident number is 44920, he said. "We will mark it as unfounded. Have a good night, Ms. Powell." "Thank you. You too." I closed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking now. Just a little. I sat down and emailed Diane immediately. Subject: wellness check executed. Incident 44,920. Please pull the dispatch recording. They had tried to humiliate me. They wanted the neighbors to see the police. They wanted a report saying I was agitated. Instead, they gave me an official government record stating that I was calm, cooperative, and sober. 2 days later, the physical intimidation escalated. I was walking to my car in the parking lot of Wexford Compliance Studio at 6 o'clock in the evening. The summer sun was still high, casting long, sharp shadows across the asphalt. I saw him. Colin was standing next to his silver sedan, parked 3 rows away from my car. He was not coming toward me. He was leaning against the driver's side door, arms crossed. wearing his sunglasses. He was just watching. It was a power move. He was telling me, "I know where you are. I can touch you whenever I want." I did not run. I did not scream. I did not scramble for my keys. I stopped walking. I took out my phone. I took a clear, high-resolution photo of him standing there. Then I took a photo of his license plate. He saw me do it. He stiffened. He expected me to hurry into my car and lock the doors. Instead, I stood there for a full 10 seconds, staring right at him. I was acknowledging his presence and logging it simultaneously. He got into his car and peeled out of the lot. Tires screeching slightly, a burst of frustration from a man who realized his scarecrow tactic had failed to scare the crows. But the attacks were not just physical, they were reputational. The next morning, a client forwarded me an email. It was from a generic Proton mail address. Subject urgent. Risk advisory regarding Wexford compliance. To whom it may concern, please be advised that Alicia Powell is currently undergoing a severe mental health crisis involving stalker-like behavior and substance abuse. We recommend auditing your sensitive data, as her judgment is currently compromised. It was unsigned. My client, a woman named Sarah, who had owned a bakery chain for 20 years, added a note at the top. Alicia, I assume this is garbage, but you need to see it. I stared at the screen. This was the nuclear option. They were trying to burn my business to the ground. If I lost my clients, I lost the war. I forwarded it to Diane. 5 minutes later, she called me. "That is it," she said. Her voice was cold steel. "They crossed the line from domestic dispute to tortious interference with business relations. I am sending the cease and desist letter, today, by courier, to Colin's office and to his home." "Do it," I said. The letter Diane sent was a masterpiece of legal aggression. It did not ask. It commanded. It cited the wellness check, the parking lot incident, and the defamatory emails. It stated clearly that any further contact would be met with a defamation lawsuit seeking damages in excess of $1 million. We expected silence. We expected them to retreat. We were wrong. 48 hours later, a process server knocked on the door of my carriage house. He handed me a thick envelope. I opened it at the kitchen table. Petition for ex parte civil protection order. Petitioner, Colin Prescott. Respondent, Alicia Powell. I read the allegations. They were breathtaking in their audacity. He claimed I was the one stalking him. He claimed I was the one sending threatening emails. He claimed that my appearance in the parking lot when I was leaving my own job was an act of intimidation. He accuses me of the exact things he is doing. I whispered to the empty room. I turned the page to the affidavit. It was signed by Colin, but there was another signature on a supporting witness statement. Sloan Mercer. She stated that she had seen me lurking outside Colin's apartment. She stated that she felt unsafe due to my obsession with her. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Most people would be terrified. A court order is a heavy thing, but I was not terrified. I was relieved, because they had put it in writing. They had sworn to these lies under penalty of perjury. As long as it was just texts and hearsay, it was messy. But now it was a crime. They had just committed perjury in an official court document. I called Diane. "They filed," I said. "I saw it on the docket," Diane replied. "The judge granted a temporary order pending a full hearing. That is standard procedure. Do not panic. It just means we stay away from him until the court date in 10 days. "I am not panicking," I said. "I am looking at the exhibit list. And there is something missing," I said. I looked closer at the paperwork. The emails they submitted as evidence of my harassment, the ones they claimed I sent, were printed out, but they were sloppy. The timestamps were in the wrong font. The header information was missing. But the most interesting thing was not what was there, but what was happening in the background. Kendra messaged me an hour later on the encrypted app. "Kendra, something is weird. Sloan just left the War Room group chat." I frowned. "Alicia." "What do you mean, Kendra?" "She left the group, and she deleted her LinkedIn profile. And I just heard Colin screaming on the phone in the other room. He was yelling, 'You cannot just leave me hanging with this.' I looked at the protection order again. Sloan had signed the witness statement. Yes, but looking closely at the date next to her signature, it was dated 3 days ago, before the cease and desist letter arrived. Since Diane's letter hit Colin's desk threatening $1 million lawsuit, Sloan had gone dark. I realized what was happening. Sloan was a director of operations. She knew how to calculate risk. She had realized that Colin was dragging her into a legal minefield that could cost her job at Everlight. She had signed the paper to appease him, but now that there was a real lawyer involved, she was cutting the line. She was setting him up. If the judge threw this out, if the perjury came to light, Sloan would claim she was manipulated by Colin too. She would say she only signed what he told her to sign. She was positioning herself to be another victim, leaving Colin standing alone in the center of the blast radius. He is alone, I said to myself. He just does not know it yet. I picked up the cease and desist letter Diane had sent. I placed it next to the fraudulent protection order Colin had filed. The trap was set, but for the first time, I was not the one standing in it. "Come on, Colin," I whispered. "Take it to court. Let's see how your script holds up when you have to read it to a judge who asks for the metadata." I went to my safe and pulled out the USB drive. I had 10 days to prepare for the hearing. 10 days to organize the truth into a weapon sharp enough to cut through 5 years of lies. I slept soundly that night. For the first time in a month, the unsafe feeling was gone. I knew exactly where I was. I was the auditor, and the audit was about to begin. The vibration of my phone on the hardwood table sounded like a drill. It was August 11th, 2025. I was 3 days away from the hearing that would decide whether I was a stalker or a victim. I was sitting in my makeshift command center in the German village carriage house, surrounded by stacks of paper that documented 5 years of my life. I picked up the phone. It was Kendra. "She contacted me," Kendra said. There was no greeting. Her voice was tight, pitched high with confusion. "Who?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Sloan," Kendra said. "She used a burner number. She sent a text to my old phone, the one I haven't used in 6 months. She knew I would check it eventually." "What did she say?" 6 words, Kendra replied. She said, "Do not let Colin speak alone." I frowned, staring at the wall where I had taped up the timeline of events. "Do not let him speak alone in court." "That is what I assume," Kendra said. Then she blocked the number. The message deleted itself 30 seconds later, but I memorized it. "Alicia, why would she warn us? She is on his side. She signed the witness statement." "She is not on his side," I said, the realization cooling my blood like liquid nitrogen. "She is on her own side, and she knows Colin is going to implode on the stand." I hung up and added this data point to the spreadsheet. August 11th, message from Sloan to Kendra. Warning regarding Colin's testimony. Sloan was hedging her bets. She had realized that the cease and desist letter from Diane meant business. She was afraid that if Colin went into that courtroom and started improvising, playing the victim, making up stories without a script, he would perjure himself so badly that he would drag her down with him. She wanted a chaperone. She wanted a lawyer in the room to shut him up. But before I could analyze the strategy further, my laptop pinged with a notification from my credit monitoring service. New account opened. My stomach turned. I had frozen my credit at the 3 major bureaus. How was this possible? I clicked the link. It was not a credit card. It was a buy now, pay later account, one of those point-of-sale financing services that often bypass strict hard inquiries if the user has a history with the merchant or uses specific loopholes in identity verification. The account was opened 20 minutes ago. The purchase men's gold chain link bracelet. Merchant Vance Company. Jewelers. Easton Town Center. Amount $1,250. Shipping address. My old house. I stared at the screen. The sheer stupidity of it was breathtaking. Colin, or someone acting as him, had used my name and social security number to buy jewelry for himself, shipping it to the house where he still lived, assuming I would not notice because I had disappeared. He was not just trying to ruin me. He was looting the ruins. I called Diane immediately. "I have a fresh flag. I said. Identity theft. Active transaction. $1,250. Print it, Diane said. Do not dispute it yet. Let the transaction post. We need the receipt to finalize. I have the forensic expert in my office right now. Can you come in? I arrived at Diane's office 40 minutes later. The forensic expert was a man named Dr. Aris Thorne. He looked more like a librarian than a tech wizard, wearing a tweed jacket and thick spectacles. He was sitting at a conference table covered in cables and hard drives. Ms. Powell, Doctor, Aris said, not looking up from his screen. I have completed the extraction of the metadata from the USB drive your friend provided. It is illuminating. Is it admissible? I asked, sitting down. It is impeccable, he said. Every file has a digital fingerprint. I have verified the hash values. The voice recordings were created on an iPhone 15 Pro registered to Colin Prescott. The creation dates match the timeline of the conspiracy, not the dates of the alleged harassment. For example, the recording where he practices saying, "I feel unsafe," was created 4 days before the argument occurred. He turned his laptop toward me. But that is not the most interesting part, he said. I ran a deeper analysis on the screenshot files, specifically, the ones showing the internal emails. He pointed to a grainy image of an email thread Kendra had captured. This email, Doctor, Aris said, tapping the screen. It is from the Everlight internal server. Look at the sender. I leaned in. The sender was system admin. The recipient was Sloan Mercer. The subject line was Compliance Alert, Project Apex Fund Transfer. Project Apex, I read aloud. That is the supply chain project Colin is working on, the one he is always stressed about. Read the body, Doctor, Aris commanded. User S, Mercer, flag transaction 99201. Amount $42,000. Destination Shellcorp LLC. Justification expedited shipping fees. Please provide vendor invoice. $42,000, I whispered. Expedited shipping fees. I did a background search on Shellcorp LLC, Diane said from the head of the table. It is a dummy corporation registered in Delaware 3 months ago. The registered agent is a generic service, but the mailing address it forwards to a P.O. box in Columbus. She slid a piece of paper across the table. A P.O. box, registered to Sloan Mercer's mother. The room fell silent. The air conditioning hum sounded like a roar. She is embezzling, I said. She is stealing money from Everlight, and not small amounts, Diane said. If we found one transaction for $42,000 in a screenshot, there are likely dozens more. She is bleeding the project dry. Suddenly, the entire nightmare made sense. The logic clicked into place with the precision of a vault door locking. That is why she needs a monster, I said. My voice shook, not with fear, but with the vibration of truth. Project Apex is failing because the money is gone. When the audit happens, and it will happen, someone has to take the fall. She cannot blame the market. She needs a scapegoat. Colin, Diane said. Colin is the project manager, I said. He signs off on the invoices. If the project collapses, it is his head on the block. But if Colin is distracted, if Colin is the victim of a deranged, stalking, abusive ex-girlfriend who is destroying his life and making him miss deadlines, then he has an excuse for the negligence, Diane finished. And Sloan gets to play the supportive colleague who tried to save the project while her manager was having a mental breakdown. She throws him under the bus to hide the theft. She is not just destroying me to get my $85,000, I said, feeling the rage clarify into a cold, hard diamond in my chest. She is destroying me to cover up a federal crime. I am the smoke bomb. And Colin is too stupid to see it. Doctor, Aris added dryly, he thinks he is scamming you for a condo down payment. He does not realize he is being groomed to go to prison for embezzlement. This changes the venue, Diane said, standing up and pacing the room. This is not just family court anymore. This is potential RICO. This is fraud. But for the hearing on Friday, we need to stay focused. We need to kill the protective order first. I have more, I said. I pulled the buy now, pay later printout from my bag. He just bought jewelry in my name. Diane took the paper. A shark-like smile spread across her face. Identity theft across state lines since the financing bank is in Utah, while a protection order petition is pending. That is beautiful. It proves he has access to your personal data and is using it maliciously. And there is this, I said. I handed her the flash drive containing the latest file Kendra had sent over an hour ago. Kendra found a draft folder on Colin's laptop. Doctor. Aris plugged it in. He opened a file named affidavit_draft_v3.docx. It was a Word document. But it was not just a statement. It was a template. I, insert name, swear under penalty of perjury that on date, I witnessed Alicia Powell acting in a threatening manner. She appeared agitated, /intoxicated, /manic. She shouted profanities such as insert swear words and refused to leave the premises. It is a form letter. Doctor, Aris noted. They have placeholders. Look at the metadata, I said. Who is the author? Doctor. Aris right-clicked on the file properties. Author R. Henderson. Company Everlight Legal Department. R. Henderson, I said. R. H. The mystery person in the group chat? Robert Henderson, Diane said immediately. I know him. He is an associate general counsel at Everlight. He handles liability claims. Why is a corporate lawyer helping an employee frame his girlfriend? I asked. Because he is sleeping with Sloan too. Doctor, Aris suggested. Or, Diane said, her eyes narrowing. Because he is in on the embezzlement. You cannot move that kind of money through a corporate logistics system without legal signing off on the vendor contracts. Sloan creates the fake shipping need. Henderson approves the fake vendor contract. And Colin blindly signs the checks because he is too busy fighting his crazy ex-girlfriend. It is a ring, I said. A 3-person ring. Colin is the patsy. Sloan is the ringleader. Henderson is the muscle. I sat back in the leather chair. I felt lightheaded. I had thought I was fighting a bad breakup. I had thought I was fighting a narcissist. Instead, I had stumbled into the middle of a corporate heist. If we win in court on Friday, I said quietly, if we just get the order dismissed, they will not stop. They cannot stop. If I walk away free. Colin wakes up. If Colin wakes up, he might check the books. If he checks the books, Sloan and Henderson go to jail. Correct, Diane said. They need you destroyed. They need you to be so consumed by legal battles and financial ruin that you cannot ask questions. And they need Colin to be so dependent on them that he never looks at what he is signing. So, we have to burn it all down, I said. Diane stopped pacing. She looked at me. What do you want to do? Alicia, we have enough to get the order dismissed. We can walk away. You have your money secured. We can file a quiet fraud report later. No, I said. If I walk away, they will find another victim. They will find another way to come after me. They have my social security number. They have my history. They will swat me again. They will ruin my business. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I want to file a cross petition, I said. Civil fraud, abuse of process, identity theft, and I want to subpoena the financial records of Project Apex as part of the discovery for the financial abuse claim. Diane raised an eyebrow. You want to subpoena a third-party corporation's internal financials in a domestic violence hearing that is aggressive. The judge might rule it irrelevant. Not if we frame it correctly, I said. Colin claims I am financially abusing him. He claims I am withholding assets to prove the marital estate. We need to see his income and his liabilities. If he is personally liable for millions in missing inventory, that is relevant to the division of assets. Diane smiled. It was a terrifying expression. You are good at this, Alicia. I am an auditor, I said. I follow the money. Okay, Diane said. We go nuclear. But be warned, once we file that subpoena, Henderson will know, Everlight will know. You are poking a very large bear. The bear is already in my house eating my porridge, I said. I might as well set the house on fire. I gathered my papers. The buy now, pay later receipt, the screenshot of the embezzled funds, the template affidavit written by the corporate lawyer. Kendra was right, I said. She told me not to let Colin speak alone. She knows that if he starts talking, he is going to accidentally confess to a crime he does not even know he committed. We will be ready, Diane said. Friday morning, 9 a.m. I walked out of the office into the blinding August sun. The heat was suffocating, but I felt cold. I walked to my car. Checking the mirrors, checking the back seat. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the unknown number again. You have 24 hours to settle. Alicia, or we release the videos. There were no videos. I knew that. They knew that. But they were desperate. The timeline was collapsing. They needed me to fold before Friday. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. I opened my spreadsheet. August 11th, 2:45 p.m. Threat of non-existent blackmail material. I typed it in. Then I drove to the nearest electronics store. I bought a voice recorder, a high-end digital one with noise cancellation. If Sloan was going to be in that courtroom, and if Henderson was going to be lurking in the back, I wanted to catch every whisper. I was not just going to win. I was going to turn the courtroom into a crime scene investigation. The preparation for the hearing did not feel like legal strategy. It felt like reprogramming. For 3 days, I sat in a conference room with Diane Wexler, and she stripped the humanity out of my speech patterns until I was nothing more than a delivery system for facts. Stop, Diane said, cutting me off for the 50th time that morning. She tapped her pen against the mahogany table. You are doing it again. You are explaining. I am trying to provide context, I said, rubbing my temples. The judge does not want context, Diane snapped. The judge has a docket of 30 cases to hear before lunch. He wants yes or no. He wants dates. He wants timestamps. Every time you say because, you are opening a door for Colin's lawyer to walk through. Close the door. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Let's try again. Ms. Powell, why did you change the locks on the marital residence? I took a breath. Because I felt unsafe and... Objection, Diane barked. Vague, subjective. Try again. I closed my eyes. I pictured the spreadsheet. I pictured the log files. On July 16th, 2025, I changed the locks to secure the property after the petitioner vacated the premises voluntarily. Better, Diane said. Ms. Powell, did you cut off the petitioner's access to the joint funds? I moved the money because he was trying to steal. Stop, Diane said. You are arguing. State the fact. I transferred funds from a sole proprietorship account in my name to a secure location to prevent unauthorized third-party access following a cybersecurity breach. Diane nodded slowly. That is the answer. Cold, boring, bureaucratic. We do not want the judge to see a heartbroken woman. We want him to see a responsible accountant dealing with a liability issue. It was a grueling process. I had to kill the part of me that wanted to scream, the part of me that wanted to stand up in court and yell. How could you do this to me? I had to replace that woman with the auditor. The auditor does not have feelings. The auditor has exhibits. By Thursday afternoon, the conference table was covered in what Diane called the wall. It was a physical manifestation of my defense. We had organized the evidence into 4 distinct binders. Binder 1 was the timeline. It was a chronological list of every interaction since July 15th, every text message from a spoofed number, every hang-up call, every login attempt. We had mapped them against Colin's work schedule and the times Sloan was active in the group chat. The correlation was perfect. When Sloan gave an order in the chat, Colin executed it within 15 minutes. Binder 2 was the tech report. Doctor. Aris had produced a 20-page affidavit certifying the authenticity of the digital evidence. He explained the metadata, the IP addresses, and the device identifiers. He destroyed the credibility of their screenshots before they could even present them. He noted that the font used in their fabricated emails was Arial. While the actual server default for my company was Calibri, it was a small detail, but in a court of law, it was a sledgehammer. Binder 3 was the witness. Kendra had come in that morning. She looked pale, but her hand was steady when she signed the formal affidavit. It was notarized by Diane's paralegal. In it, Kendra swore under penalty of perjury that Colin had solicited her to provide false testimony regarding the fictitious July 4th party. She included the text messages where he asked her to lie. "You know he will hate you for this," I had said to her as she put the pen down. "He hates everyone, Alicia," Kendra had replied softly. "He just pretends to like people he can use. I am just the first one to stop being useful." Binder 4 was the reversal. This was my favorite. It contained the wellness check report, the police incident number, and the log of my radio silence. "This is our pivot point," Diane explained, tapping the binder. "The standard for a protection order requires a showing of imminent danger or a pattern of stalking. We are going to ask the reverse question. If I am the stalker," I rehearsed, "why am I the one who blocked him on every channel if I am the obsessive one? Why is he the one creating burner numbers to contact me?" "Exactly," Diane said. "Stalkers do not block their victims. Stalkers do not hide. Logic is on our side. But we needed more than logic. We needed a kill shot. It came at 4:30 in the afternoon on Thursday. We were doing a final review of the documents. I was scanning the marriage license, the piece of paper Colin and I had signed 18 months ago at the courthouse. I had looked at it 1,000 times, but always with a sentimental eye. Today, I looked at it with my auditor's eye. I stopped at box 11, number of previous marriages. Colin had typed 0. I frowned. "Diane," I said, "look at this." She leaned over. "What?" "He typed 0, I said. "But look at the residential history section on the background check, doctor. Heiress ran." I pulled up the background report on the laptop. It showed a list of addresses where Colin Prescott had received mail in the last 10 years. Most of them I knew. The apartment in Short North, the house we shared. But there was one address in Las Vegas, Nevada, a short-term rental in Henderson. He lived there for 6 months 7 years ago. He had told me he was there for a logistics contract. "Why is that significant?" Diane asked. "Because," I said, feeling a strange tingle at the base of my neck. "Kendra told me about the girl in Cincinnati who killed herself, but she said there was a test run before her, someone he dated in Vegas." I looked at the marriage license again. "If he lived in Nevada," I said, "and he is a pathological liar who uses women for financial gain, why would he stop at dating?" Diane picked up her phone. She called a contact she had, a paralegal based in Clark County, Nevada, who specialized in records retrieval. "I need a search," Diane said into the phone. "Colin James Prescott, date of birth, March 12th, 1990, check for marriage certificates, not divorce decrees, marriage certificates." We waited. The silence in the office was heavy. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. 20 minutes later, the printer in the corner whirred to life. It spit out a single page. It was a PDF copy of a marriage certificate from the Clark County Clerk's office. Groom Colin James Prescott, bride Elena Rossetti, date February 14th, 2018. I stared at the paper. He was married. "Wait," Diane said. "Let me check for the dissolution." She typed furiously on her laptop, accessing the Nevada Court Public Records portal. She searched for a divorce decree between Colin Prescott and Elena Rossetti. "No results found," she whispered. She broadened the search to Ohio. No results. She searched nationwide databases. "Alicia," Diane said, looking up at me. Her face was pale. "There is no divorce record. There is no annulment." I felt the room spin. "You mean—" "I mean he is still married," Diane said. "Technically, legally, he never divorced Elena Rossetti, which means my marriage to him is void." I finished. "It is bigamy. It never existed." The implications cascaded through my mind like falling dominoes. If our marriage was void, there was no marital property. He had no claim to my savings. He had no standing to ask for spousal support. He had no legal right to anything I owned. But then I looked at the name again. Elena Rossetti. Why does that name sound familiar? I asked. I went to the binder containing the corporate structure of Everlight Transit Systems, the document's doctor. Eris had pulled to map the embezzlement scheme. I scanned the list of board members and high-level executives. I stopped at the bottom of the page. Chief Financial Officer Marcus Rossetti. Oh my God, I whispered. Diane looked at where my finger was pointing. She gasped, a sound I had never heard her make. He married the CFO's daughter, Diane said. That is how he got the job at Everlight. That is why he rose so fast. He married into the family. Probably to get a foothold. And then what abandoned her? Or she left him, I said. And he was too lazy, or too arrogant, or too afraid of losing his status to file the paperwork. So he just buried it. This explains everything, Diane said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. This is why Sloan and Henderson are protecting him. It is not just the embezzlement. If it comes out that the project manager is a bigamist who is technically still married to the CFO's daughter, the scandal would be nuclear. It would trigger a full internal audit of his hiring, his background, and his projects. They are terrified that if Colin falls, the Rossetti family will look too closely at Project Apex. This is the ace, I said. This is not just an ace, Diane said, grabbing the paper and shoving it into a fresh manila folder. This is the nuclear launch code, but we do not use it yet. Why not? I asked. Because we want him to lie first, Diane said. Her eyes were hard. We want him to get on that stand tomorrow and swear under oath that he is your husband. We want him to swear that he is an honest man. We want him to commit perjury 5 or 6 times, and then only then do we drop the bomb. She handed the folder to me. Keep this safe, she said. Tomorrow, you walk into that courtroom and you let him think he's winning. You let him think he has you cornered, and when he is standing tall, feeling like the king of the world, we pull the floor out from under him. I took the folder. My hands were not shaking. I felt a cold, calm certainty that was almost terrifying. I went home to the carriage house. I did not turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, watching the feed from the security cameras. At 10:14 at night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Colin. He had unblocked himself using a new method. Or maybe I had missed one of his burner numbers. If you are a good girl tomorrow, I will drop the petition. I just want us to be okay again. Do not make me destroy you. Ali, good girl. The condescension dripped from the screen. He thought he was being benevolent. He thought he was offering me a lifeline. He had no idea that he was standing on a trapdoor with a noose around his neck. And I was holding the lever. I did not reply. I did not feel the urge to tell him to go to hell. I simply took a screenshot. I saved it to the cloud. I added it to the timeline. August 14th, 10:14 p.m. Attempted witness intimidation/manipulation. I went to bed. I slept for 8 hours. It was the deep, dreamless sleep of the prepared. The next morning, August 15th, I woke up at 6 o'clock. I showered. I put on my armor. I did not wear a soft dress. I did not wear the pastel colors Colin used to say he liked. I wore a navy blue suit, sharp and tailored. I wore heels that clicked against the floor like a metronome. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe bun. I looked in the mirror. Alicia Powell, the girlfriend, was gone. She had been left behind in a house with a changed lock. The woman looking back at me was the CEO of Wexford Compliance Studio. I drove to the courthouse. The morning air was cool, hinting at the coming autumn. I parked my car. I picked up the 4 binders. I checked my bag for the manila folder containing the Nevada marriage certificate. I saw Colin's car in the lot. He was standing near the entrance, smoking a cigarette. He looked nervous, but he was trying to hide it. He was wearing a suit that was slightly too large for him, an attempt to look humble. Perhaps Sloan was nowhere to be seen, as I predicted. She had cut him loose to face the firing squad alone, but I knew she would be watching, Or maybe Henderson would be there, lurking in the back row. I walked past Colin. I did not look at him. "Alicia," he called out. His voice was hopeful. "Can we talk for a second?" I did not break my stride. I did not turn my head. I walked up the concrete steps, the sound of my heels echoing against the stone. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not hatred. Hatred is hot. Hatred is messy. This was something else. It was the absolute, crystalline silence of a room that has been completely soundproofed. I was not here to argue. I was not here to fight. I was here to close the file. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the courthouse and stepped into the cool, recycled air of the lobby. Let him tell his story. Let him perform. Let him weep. I had the receipts. And for the first time in 5 years, the math was finally going to work in my favor. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. Courtroom 4B was smaller than I expected, a windowless box designed to contain the wreckage of human relationships. I sat at the defense table next to Diane Wexler. My hands were folded in my lap. I was not shaking. I was the auditor, and I was ready to review the books. The hearing began at 9:15 in the morning. Colin sat at the plaintiff's table with a lawyer I did not recognize, a young, aggressive man in a shiny suit who looked like he billed by the email. Colin was performing beautifully. He wore a gray suit that was slightly rumpled, suggesting sleepless nights. He kept his head down. When he spoke, his voice was a masterclass in manufactured vulnerability. "Your Honor," Colin said, looking up at the judge with eyes that looked wet and red-rimmed. "I did not want to come here today. I love Alicia, but her behavior, it has become dangerous. She follows me. She threatens me financially. She has cut me off from our shared assets. When I try to talk to her, she stares at me in a way that makes me feel unsafe." He used the word unsafe. He let it hang in the air like a poisonous cloud. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Patterson, who looked like she had heard every lie ever invented, nodded slowly. "Specific instances, Mr. Prescott." "She stood in the parking lot of my workplace," Colin said, his voice trembling just enough. "She stood there and watched me. It was intimidation. She sent emails to my colleagues claiming I was unstable. She is trying to destroy my career because I asked for a break in the relationship." It was a compelling story. If I did not know the truth, I might have believed him. He looked like a man at the end of his rope. Then, it was our turn. Diane stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not pace. She simply walked to the podium and placed Binder 1 on the stand. "Your Honor," Diane said, "the defense disputes the entirety of the petitioner's narrative. We argue that this petition is not a tool for protection, but a weapon of harassment." She opened the binder. "Mr. Prescott claims my client is stalking him, yet Exhibit A shows a complete communication log from Ms. Powell's service provider. Since July 16th, Ms. Powell has not placed a single outgoing call or sent a single text message to the petitioner. In fact, she has blocked him on 47 different channels." Diane paused, letting the silence do the work. "If she is the stalker, Your Honor, why is she the one hiding?" Colin's lawyer objected, but the judge waved him off. "Continue." Diane pulled out Exhibit B. "Mr. Prescott claims my client loitered at his workplace to intimidate him. Here is the metadata from the photo. Miss Powell took that day. It shows she was leaving her own office, which shares a parking lot zone, and here's the security footage from the building. It shows Mr. Prescott waiting by her car for 20 minutes before she exited. Who was waiting for whom?" "Your Honor." Colin shifted in his seat. The sad victim mask slipped for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flash of annoyance. Diane moved to the wellness check. "The petitioner claims he fears for his safety, yet, on August 7th, an anonymous caller sent police to Ms. Powell's home claiming she was a danger to herself. The police report, Exhibit C, describes Ms. Powell as calm, cooperative, and rational. The officer noted no signs of distress. This was a swatting attempt, Your Honor, a waste of public resources designed to generate a paper trail. Diane turned to Colin. Mr. Prescott, do you recognize these phone numbers? She projected a list of 12 numbers on the small screen near the witness box. I do not, Colin stammered. I get a lot of spam calls. That is strange, Diane said, because Exhibit D shows that these 12 numbers all burner lines sent harassing texts to my client at all hours of the night, and geolocation data links the IP addresses of the apps used to generate these numbers to the Wi-Fi network at your residence. Colin went pale. He looked at his lawyer, who was suddenly very interested in his own fingernails. I might have tried to reach out, Colin said, his voice losing its tremble and gaining a defensive edge. I was worried about her. She stole my money. We will get to the money, Diane said coldly. But first, the witness. Diane called Kendra Prescott. When Kendra walked in, Colin made a noise, a sharp intake of breath that sounded like a hiss. He glared at her. It was not the look of a frightened victim. It was the look of a predator whose prey had just bitten back. Kendra sat down. She kept her eyes on Diane. Ms. Prescott, Diane asked, did your brother ask you to testify today? Yes, Kendra said softly. What did he ask you to say? He asked me to say that I saw Alicia throw a knife at him at a 4th of July party in 2024, Kendra said. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. But there was no party. Alicia and Colin were in South Carolina. He sent me a script. He told me that if I signed it, Alicia would settle out of court and pay him $50,000. The courtroom went dead silent. The judge stopped writing. She looked over her glasses at Colin. He told me, Kendra continued, tears running down her face, that he needed to create a record of instability because the judge would believe a safety concern over the truth. Objection, Colin's lawyer shouted. Hearsay. We have the text messages, Diane said, slapping binder 3 onto the table. Exhibit F, screenshots of the conversation where Mr. Prescott instructs his sister on how to use the phrase walking on eggshells to manipulate the court. The judge picked up the binder. She flipped through the pages. Her face hardened into a mask of stone. Mr. Prescott, the judge said, not looking up. Did you write these texts? I was coached, Colin blurted out. It was not my idea. I was just trying to protect myself. Coached by whom? The judge asked. Colin clamped his mouth shut. He realized too late that he had just admitted to the conspiracy. Diane moved in for the kill. Your Honor, we have a forensic report from Dr. Eris Thorne confirming the authenticity of these messages. We also have audio recordings where Mr. Prescott admits to planning this litigation to seize assets. The assets are marital property, Colin shouted. Standing up, his facade had completely crumbled. The red-rimmed eyes were gone, replaced by the sneer I knew so well. She took $85,000. That is theft. I am her husband. I have a right to that money. Diane smiled. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. Actually, Diane said, reaching into her briefcase. You do not? She pulled out the manila folder. Mr. Prescott claims a right to marital assets based on his marriage to my client in January of 2024. However, for a marriage to be valid, both parties must be eligible to wed. Diane walked to the judge's bench. She handed over the single sheet of paper we had retrieved from Nevada. Your Honor, I present Exhibit Z, a certified marriage certificate from Clark County, Nevada, dated February 14th, 2018, between Colin James Prescott and Elena Rossetti. Colin froze. He looked like he had been struck by lightning. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. We have conducted a nationwide search, Diane continued, her voice ringing clear and triumphant in the small room. There is no record of a divorce. There is no annulment. Mr. Prescott is still legally married to Mrs. Rossetti. Diane turned to face the courtroom. Therefore, his marriage to my client is void ab initio. It never legally existed. There is no marital property. There is no husband. There is only a man who committed bigamy and is now attempting to use the court system to extort a woman he has no legal claim over. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy and physical. The judge looked at the document. Then she looked at Colin. "Mr. Prescott," the judge said. Her voice was terrifyingly quiet. "Is this true?" Colin slumped into his chair. He looked small. He looked like a child caught stealing candy. Except the candy was $42,000 of embezzled corporate funds and my life savings. We were separated," he whispered. "I thought it was automatic after 5 years." "That is not how the law works," the judge snapped. She slammed the file shut. "The petition for a protective order is dismissed with prejudice." The judge ruled. "Mr. Prescott, I am finding you in contempt of court for perjury. I am also referring this entire file, including the evidence of bigamy, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud, to the district attorney's office. You are to remain in this courtroom until the bailiff can take you into custody." She turned to me. Her expression softened, just a fraction. "Ms. Powell, you are free to go, and I apologize that my court was used as a stage for this theater." I stood up. I did not look at Colin. I could hear him arguing with his lawyer, his voice rising in panic, blaming Sloan, blaming the system, blaming everyone but himself. I walked out of the courtroom. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the time I got to my car, the dominoes were already falling. Everlight Transit Systems, alerted by the subpoena we had filed that morning regarding the financial records, launched an immediate internal audit when they found out their project manager was a bigamist married to the CFO's daughter. The protection crumbled. Sloan Mercer resigned 2 hours later. She disappeared from social media, her LinkedIn gone, her phone disconnected. Rumor had it she was facing federal charges for the $42,000 she had siphoned off. Colin was fired for cause. He was facing charges for bigamy and fraud. The buy now, pay later jewelry purchase became a federal identity theft charge because it crossed state lines. He lost the condo. He lost the job. He lost the girl. And I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot. I put my hands on the steering wheel. The leather felt warm under my palms. I took a deep breath. I did not scream. I did not laugh. I did not drive to a bar and pop champagne. I just breathed. The $85,000 was safe in my new bank account. My business was safe. My reputation was intact. I looked in the rearview mirror. Alicia Powell looked back at me. She looked tired. She had dark circles under her eyes, but she was clear. Revenge is not about making them scream. It is not about slashing tires or throwing clothes on the lawn. Revenge is about the truth. It is about stripping away the lies they use to control you until they are standing naked in the cold light of day. And you are the one holding the coat. They wanted a villain. They wanted a victim. I gave them neither. I gave them an audit. And the books were finally balanced. I started the car, put it in drive, and pulled out of the lot. I did not look back at the courthouse. I had a meeting at 2 o'clock. I had a company to run. And for the first time in 5 years, I was completely, wonderfully safe. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please let me know in the comments where you are listening from to connect and share your thoughts. I invite you to subscribe to the Amelia Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and support by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.